Life's full of tough questions. We're drinking while we try to figure them out. I'm Trey.
And I'm Paul.
Welcome to Tipsy Theology. All right, Paul. How you doing?
Dude, I'm doing okay. We got Jamie here.
Jamie's
we got
in
our
the
guest.
studio.
We got our guest Jamie in the studio.
First guest on the podcast. We got Jamie from Ireland.
Welcome, my boy.
Now, Jamie, I got to ask you. Are you excited about St. Patty's Day?
So, am I allowed to do an Irish accent?
Oh,
or is
please.
That...
No, we're not doing that.
I don't know if that's going to get me in
No.
trouble or not.
Oh, I wasn't even thinking about that. I just don't want to hear you try.
Dude, I've got a straight up, not a good one. It's more of like the leprechaun accent, so it's probably going to offend everybody. That's why I'm not doing it.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks, Jamie. Ooh, that's Jameson.
Yeah, I wanted to take a break there, right there, just so our listeners would know how much I enjoyed that.
Yeah, honestly,
A little bit of a moment of silence.
moment of silence for the Jameson. I can take that for you if you want. That's one thing I do enjoy about Jameson. It's always just a solid shot. It's nice to mix into things too. It's just like I love having it around.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
Go ahead and get that tequila ready, and then
this is like my favorite tequila. It's so good. I've only had a few. Trey turned me on to this one. The bottle looks sweet.
Yeah, I bought it for the bottle.
Yeah, well, I bought it 2 reasons. One, because it was like really good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Second, because the bottle looks sweet.
And it was on sale.
It was on sale.
Yeah. That'll do it.
I was like, I can get into this.
So I had a pretty pretty obvious revelation for why we're doing this podcast today.
Yeah.
So I'm a substitute, right?
Mhm.
I'm hanging out with high schoolers during the day.
Nice.
And I don't try to talk about religion in class because I don't think I'm supposed to.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I've got my ministry degree now, and these kids they're pretty intrigued with me because
They want to know about Mr. Trey.
they want to know about Mr. Hinkle, And
Do they call you Mr. Hinkle? Or
they call me Mr. Hinkle strictly. I don't tell them what my first name is.
Okay.
A couple of them know because they know me out of school from like church
Got
and
it.
stuff, but I tell them not to tell other people.
It's like it's our secret.
I try to be a little enigma that they got to
Yeah.
try to figure out, Mysterious.
So when they're not focused on their homework, they can focus on.
Okay, those kids don't do anything when I'm there. I'm like, y'all should probably do your work.
Make sure. Oh, at least you're telling them to do their work.
I tell them to do the work. I'm like,
I was like, what if someone from your school?
my
listens
hands
to
are clean.
this?
My hands are clean. No, it's every other class is good.
Okay, that's good.
But here's the fun thing, is the worst students are my favorite.
There's a level of excitement they can bring to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they also get on my nerves a lot, and they drain me. Oh, man, they drain
Oh
me.
man.
But I don't. And so there's one student I had today who I've had a couple of times now, and there's another student today who's like a little bit of a humble brag here. He's like, dude, you're like the chillest professor ever. Well, not professor. They don't say that till college. Teacher.
That's fair.
You're like the chillest.
But you're starting them early. You're
you're like-
starting them early.
You're like the chillest substitute. And I'm like, yeah, except for this class, because this kid right here, I'm getting on to him all day long.
You're like, that's awesome. Now do your work.
And he's my favorite, so I gotta
That's awesome.
look out for him by making sure he's on task, right?
Oh yeah.
Anyways, so these kids, sometimes they'll take an interest in me and they're trying to figure me out, and they're like, all right, so you just graduated college. What was your degree? And I'm like, oh no.
Here we go.
It always leads to some questions. I'm like,
Is it possible to avoid religion in school when your degree
It's
is
inevitable.
in
It's like-
religion?
hey, what do you do anytime you're not in this school? What are you doing? Oh, I'm probably at church or doing the podcast.
Where we talk
about God.
They're like, oh, cool, tell me more. I really can't.
No.
I would love to, but see, I want to keep working.
Anyways, so I'm like, yeah, ministry. And then, so that always entails more questions. Usually it's like a lot of kids go to church. So then they hear that and like, oh, I can identify with you.
Yeah.
Me and you, man, we're a team. We're a team. And I'm like, no, we're not a team. We're not a team.
Not these other sinners here.
Anyways.
But I mean, it's like they're well-meaning too, I think, in a lot of ways, because it's like, oh, their kids are curious, which is good.
Exactly.
And it's like they're curious about something that they don't often hear about sometimes.
Well, what I liked about this kid was he was extremely curious, but then he was still very like stuck in this binary way of thinking, like black and white. And so which is what I'm getting at here is like what made me think about the podcast was the question came up. He asked me, he was like, do your religious beliefs, well, because first we talked about religion for a while, and he was like, oh, that's too controversial. Let's move on to politics. And then he
it's
asked
like,
me,
what's more controversial, religion or politics?
Paul, they're the same thing.
It's exactly the same.
They're the same thing, and I'll tell you why. It all goes into what I'm saying here. And so he asked me, he said, do your religious views influence your politics? And I said, oh, extremely. And he said, oh, so you're conservative. And I was like, nope. And so that's it. You know, don't need to add any more to that story, but like, it's like.
But you know where the other side comes into then.
You can't force Christianity into a box like that. And I think, you know, there's evangelicals have the biggest population in our country of Christians right now, so they kind of shape the way Christianity is perceived in the West. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be that way. So.
Yeah, that's fair. And it is kind of that either or, I think, in a lot of ways. You're either this or you're this.
Yeah, and
there's nothing in between
thinking,
there. Yeah. It's like, oh, so are you right-leaning? No. Oh, then you're left-leaning? No.
Yeah, because he followed up and he was like, you're left-leaning? And I was like, not really. I mean, maybe. It depends on who's asking, you know?
Yeah, right. Depends on the topic.
You would probably say so. I probably wouldn't. That's okay.
Yeah, that's fair.
Anyways, let's drink this tequila.
We got tequila. Yeah, there's like a good like oak. To that.
That is, yeah. It's interesting we're taking these shots of different liquor, which you're not supposed to do. But, you know, we're mixing all these shots together. It's interesting how it changes the flavor profile.
It kind of does.
Remember when we were sipping on that tequila the other day, and it was very vanilla-y.
It really was.
I'm tasting saltiness now.
Especially after that Jameson, there's like a savory flavor to it. We're getting laughed at. But yeah, because I remember, when we drank it, it was like, this is super vanilla.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
gave it like an A vanilla at the time.
Yeah.
Today I'm thinking more like 5 or 6.
I agree with that. Yeah, I'm just getting more of like an oak to that or something.
Wait, okay, so we've taken 2 shots so far.
Yeah, we have. We gotta find.
What's next, Paul?
We gotta. I can't say fan favorite because it's St. Patty's Day, or it's getting close.
It's getting close. This podcast will probably come out a little bit after St. Patty's Day.
It'll be after St. Patty's Day. But no, we were well-meaning. And this is green, and also we like it. It tastes good.
So what are we drinking?
We got absinthe here.
Oh.
So the first time I had absinthe, it's like sealed on here, man. The first time I had this was our unofficial podcast. And this will be the second time I've ever had this before. And leading up to it, Trey told me a story about it, about the legality of absinthe.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was illegal from...
It's like, was it like 2004 or like something?
Super early 1900s all the way to like 2006 or something like that.
That's insane.
About 100 years. Almost 100 years.
Ooh.
And today we're drinking it on the podcast.
And here we are.
Here we are, yeah.
Because
isn't it crazy how times change? Yeah.
What a great look right there, too.
We went from illegal to prohibition of all alcohol.
Yeah.
To Christians drinking alcohol.
Here we are, talking about God.
How did we get here?
It is kind of a weird journey that we've been on in that sense.
Well, it just goes to show how much the culture
Yeah.
still influences Christianity, no matter how much they want to fight the culture
I think
and
that's
make it a war.
That's true. That's an important point too. The fact of how intertwined those things can be,
Mm-hmm.
and just tradition on top of that too.
Yeah.
Is it right or wrong? But here we are.
All right, let's take the shot and then let's get into it.
I'm ready to get into
I'm ready
it.
to get into it.
I'm really ready.
Here, cheers.
Cheers, man. That's mouthwash. And we said that. I said that last time. So, because I know you guys haven't seen it, 'cause it's not posted. But the joke I made after I had that, I was like, it tastes like Listerine. It's like I don't brush my teeth anymore. I just take a shot of absinthe.
Yeah,
before
one shot in
bed.
the morning, one shot at night.
That's
Good to
right.
go.
My teeth are sparkling clean.
Sparkling clean. Anyways,
Man, you want to pour us today?
yeah, I'll
You
pour.
pour it.
I'll pour. You tell us what we're talking about today.
Yeah. So today we wanted to talk about judging.
What do you mean by that?
There's a lot of ways to take it for sure. I know one of the biggest things we wanted to look at. I'm thinking of how the best way to say this too is like there's a stigma around Christians.
Yeah.
You know, they're known as very judgmental people in a lot of ways. And I think that's an issue. So we want to spend some time talking about that. What does that mean? Why is that the case in some ways? What can we do to resolve that, fix that, be better at it? Be better. But yeah, so I guess kind of talking about that. What do we think about that? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing?
I'm interested in the way you phrase that.
Hmm.
Because I don't... Christians are very judgmental people. And I wonder,
Yeah.
it's not because they're Christians. I want to go ahead and say that. I think it's more along the lines of the kinds of people that become Christians. I think we're dealing with people that are temperamentally lean towards more dogmatic lifestyle. People that require more rules. They find themselves in the West. Well, what offers the most rules? The Christian religion.
Yeah.
So they verge on fundamental Christianity.
Yeah. I could say it like in a very blatant way for me, and I'll try to fix it later probably in some ways. But it's the sense of there's I'll say personality that is when I view myself in a moral high ground, I'm better than everyone else who doesn't fit my idea of a moral high ground.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of it comes to, which is what you're saying.
So I think we all kind of were...
In our own way, we definitely have those points.
Most people are kind of predisposed to finding a moral high ground to climb up on. Because, it's not like a conservative problem. Liberals do the same thing.
Yeah.
So...
Because that's the whole thing is like we compare ourselves based on other people. We gauge how we're doing often, whether it's subconscious or consciously. How is someone else compared to me? Am I doing okay?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this person, killed somebody, so I'm better than him.
Yeah,
because I haven't done that.
If you want a moral high ground, compare yourself to the worst person you can find.
You're gonna feel good.
Yeah. I haven't done that.
Yeah.
I'll go on the record right now. Say I haven't killed anybody.
Let's drink these beers.
Yeah, I already took a sip. I'm sorry.
Oh no. So this is the
Rome City.
Rome City.
From Brew Hub. Brew Hub Rome City IPA.
I like it.
Yeah, it's super drinkable.
Yes, this is the IPA, but it's got kind of a... It kind of reminds me of like a little bit of like a shandy kind of thing too. It's got... a sour. Sorry, not a shandy. A sour.
I'm still disagreeing with you.
There's that... You can disagree for sure. But there's that note of it. For some reason, for me, it's kind of giving me that like little bit of like sour note to it.
Mm-hmm. It's fruity, so I'll give you that.
It is fruity.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just because of what we started,
yeah.
what we put before that. Maybe I'm getting that more now.
Mm-hmm.
But I really enjoy it. I think, it definitely has a fruity flavor to it. It's not too hoppy. So it's something that's very sippable for sure.
So I want to go back to what you were originally saying about how Christians are perceived.
Mm-hmm.
I've already made the analysis that, there are a good bit of Christians that are way more judgmental than is called for. I mean, I'm going to take the stance that judgment isn't. I mean, the verse says, "Judge not." Judge
I know
not,
we have it.
you
We have
know?
it pulled up here because we
Judge
knew
not, lest thee be judged.
we knew
So,
we'd get into it.
yeah, definitely.
And it's something that's very, I guess it's very close to a lot of people's tongue. It's on the tip of everyone's tongue.
Mm-hmm.
When it's like, I'm going to judge you for something. It's like, oh.
I'm going to judge you for judging.
Exactly.
No, but dealing with that, the fact that Christians are perceived that way, it's not fixable. I think the proper way forward is not to try to save the Christian image in the West. It's just to pave another way. Pave the way, Christ's way. You know, he called himself the way. So, despite the fact that Christians hold this not even stereotype, but like it's so common, you know.
Oh yeah.
So we just have to pave another way and function as this sort of minority group of Christians that say, hey, we reject that. We reject that. Every time it comes up, I reject that. I'm not going to support that. But I don't think there's redeeming the evangelical image.
I mean, it's one of those where it's like, I feel like if that's ever a possibility, it's a very difficult possibility to the point where maybe it is pointless. But I guess regardless of that, I think that's an interesting. I like the verbiage you used of paving a new way, and I think that's kind of, it goes into, it's a very famous quote. I don't remember who said it, but it's be the change you want to see in others. But you know, it's kind of what you're saying, where it's like, okay, so if we want to see this change, let's be that change. So if we like, okay, if there's this image of that, let's not be that.
Yeah,
that's very blanket to throw that out.
Yeah,
like that.
I mean, I'm sitting here wrestling with that statement. Yeah. Yeah, so you kind of, when we always go deeper than I expect us to, you know? And then I'm like, now I got to relate this to my
now
personal,
I have to think,
personal life. I'm like, I don't want to say this on a podcast. But like, where I'm at,
and here I might just say whatever comes to my head. Almost everything that comes to my head.
I got a persona to keep up, Paul.
You're right.
One that doesn't drink on a podcast.
Goodbye.
No, so like I've kind of gone to an extreme to say I don't care if people call me a Christian anymore. I don't have to identify with the group. It's like, it's kind of ridiculous to think, if I was me, if I knew somebody like me 2 years ago, I'd have been like, oh, they're so stupid. They're following Christ. They're a Christian. I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, I am a Christian. You just don't get it. I don't want to be identified with the evangelical culture right now.
And actually, I agree with you in that sense, where I do struggle a little bit to when people ask me sometimes, I'll say yes, but there's a part of me that's like, oh, I don't like,
because they're instantly going to throw you in. They're going to throw you in that box of like,
I don't like the baggage that comes with the word,
judgmental, and
right. And actually, that's happened. I remember a job I used to work at. One of the ladies there asked me, she's like, "Oh, are you a Christian?" I was like, "Yeah, I am." She's like, "Oh, you probably hate me then, because I'm divorced." Like, no.
Yeah, it carries so many preconceived
and
notions.
It's like, just because I identified with a group, I was all this baggage that she's, I don't want to say baggage, but all this like perceived judgment that she's carrying from this group of people, she then, finds a new person to put it onto, and it's like, no, I don't hate you. I don't hate you because of that at all. It's because you're a terrible. No, I'm kidding. I'm teasing.
But like, that's exactly what happened in class today. The reason I don't like talking about it is because I know the Christian kids, the really the evangelical ones, are gonna be like, "Oh, he's one of us," and I'm like, I'd rather identify with the non-Christians.
Well, I think so. That's what it is for me. So it's like, and that's kind of where the word Christian, Christ follower, came from. Is like, you're identifying with the person you're following.
Yeah.
And now it's changed to you're identifying with the group of people that claim to follow this person.
Yeah, with the majority group.
Yeah. And it's like, no, I don't identify with them.
Yeah.
I identify with Christ.
Yeah, we need new language, which is sad.
Yeah.
Because Christian is good. It's such a good terminology.
It's a great word.
It gets straight to the point. It means Christ follower. Like what? How more explicit could you be?
I mean, in a sense, one of the things that I've been doing is like, am I a Christian? Yeah, I'm a Christ follower. When people ask,
Yeah,
like,
I say Christ follower.
I'm a Christ follower.
Yeah.
There's like I can't use the word. I have to use the definition of the word.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing too. But I mean, it's not important to me that I identify as a Christian. What's important is that I act as if I was a Christian. You know?
Yeah.
That's I've been consumed with that idea recently. I don't even have to say I'm a Christian. Just have to act like it. It's like I believe in Jesus. So if you want to call me a Christian, go ahead.
Yeah.
But that's up to you.
Yeah, that's fair. And it kind of does go back into, I guess, taking it to more of taking a step back from that. Something you said earlier, it's like, oh, it's because these things have been so intertwined with religion and culture. And so because of the history of, let's say, the U.S. culture, conservative Christianity has been defined by that. And that's how we're like, oh, that's what that looks like. It's like, that's what it looked like.
I really like how you said that. And here's why. You know, because I like how you said this is how conservative Christianity is, like, painted. It's like, oh, why did he say conservative here? And then I was like...
I use that word on purpose.
I know you did. And I'm glad you did, because despite the fact that I do tend towards more liberal ideas in Christianity and politics, I still think there is a redemptive quality of conservative Christianity as well. I don't want that to go away.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
yeah, I think that's part of it. It's like there's things that both sides offer. I hate saying sides, but there's the two ideologies. I don't even like saying that. It's like that these two people offer that is different, and that's important.
Exactly. Well, I mean, that's also why we're doing the podcast. Is like we're here to disagree, kind of.
Right?
We haven't gotten into anything too heated yet, but like we'll get there.
It's true.
Gonna happen. But that doesn't mean I want to just like completely dismantle you and make you a liberal.
And on the same side, I would say I probably lean more conservative Christian, but I don't want everyone to be that either, because I don't totally view myself as that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important thing too. Even with, you mentioned like, you know, getting into a heated argument. I don't even want to do that. Like, let's just keep it like we can totally disagree and still be Christians and still be friends.
Okay, so, well, I think it'd be helpful if we kind of defined why the good and the bad of both conservatism and liberalism. And so if we start with the extremes, conservatives at the extreme want to keep things exactly as they are.
Yep.
Or go back to when things were better.
Mm-hmm.
And liberals at the extreme want to tear everything down and start over.
Yeah.
And then the more you move towards the middle, the more you're going to find conservatives saying, let's, keep the good. And more towards the middle, the liberals are going to say, let's replace the bad with better.
Yeah.
Or let's even replace the good with better. And so I think we need to hold on to this conservative.
Yeah.
Speaking as a liberal, we need to hold on to this conservative idea of hold fast to what is good.
Mm-hmm.
Leave the rest of it behind.
Yeah, I know. I guess the phrase I'm thinking of with that is like, is the worst of evangelicalism? Is it so bad that the good of it can't fix what's the worst? Does that make sense? I said that very poorly. But I think that's kind of the question it kind of goes down to in some ways of like, how do we move forward? Is like, is it so bad that it can't be fixed by what's good with it?
Okay, so I'll take the stance right now and just say ditch evangelicalism. That's just me. But I have liberal tendencies.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, that's fair. And mentally I'm a DIYer, so I'm like,
Let's fix it,
we
baby
can
up.
fix it. I'm Bob the Builder over here, Paul the Builder. Like, we can fix it.
Well, and so, I mean, there's certain things in conservatism that I am judgmental about.
Mhm.
We'll put it that way.
Me too.
So hopefully, I hope that conservative Christians can agree, let's leave the racism behind.
Mm-hmm.
Because the stigma is conservatives tend towards racism.
It's true. Let's just read the Bible real quick.
I think we can all agree.
And then throw it away.
Let's leave that one behind. Doesn't fit.
Right?
Does not fit in the gospel. I think a harder one, though. I think a harder one for conservatives is going to be homophobia. And by that, I don't mean like conservatives fear gay people, but maybe they do.
You remind me of like a Bill Burr joke.
But how do conservatives come to a place where they're either, I mean, I would hope they'd become affirming. I realize how difficult that is and how much of a hurdle that is going to be. It's going to take a lot of biblical intellectualism, and conservatives are kind of swayed away from that kind of thing. But in the very least, be as welcoming as possible. I think we mentioned this on the last long form episode. Like, be as welcoming as you possibly can, despite your disagreements in theology, right?
Yeah.
And then lastly, I think another of the big trinity of problems I see. And maybe
only three.
Maybe these are the big three. Just let the women preach, man.
You're starting. It's so funny.
Sorry.
No, that's funny.
I just needed to get that out there.
That's awesome. That's so good.
But I get it. It takes. I understand. I don't understand the racism. I'll go ahead and throw that out there. I don't get it.
Yeah.
In terms of Christianity, like, I realize how people can be terrible, but like in terms of using the Bible to support it,
they obviously haven't read it.
Yeah. But so it's not obvious that the Bible or Christianity, if you look through the lens of Scripture, it's not obvious that God would be affirming of non-straight sexualities. And I think it takes just a little bit of study, but without any study and just reading the Bible, it's not obvious that God wants women to be preachers either. Well, no, I want to clarify that. I think the Bible is pretty obvious, in the Gospels. It's just that Paul writes, women can't teach. I don't permit women to teach, and it's like that kind of contradicts what we're reading in the Gospels. So
there's on both those. I've got a lot, probably some of it that you wouldn't expect, but it's like those are two big topics I'd love to get into.
Yeah, and so those are topics for a different day, but that's just my. Yeah. Those
are your big. I'm just throwing it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are the big three. Those are the where probably the big three of, this is why Christians are so judgmental, because they're,
and that's how it's applicable to this topic, in saying that these are, whether it's those three, those are the three you picked out.
Yeah.
Or it's others. I know it's others for other people too.
Yeah.
Those are the ones where they're like, okay, I'm putting my foot down on this. This thing is a bunch of hypocrites, to use that word. It's a bunch of hypocrites because they read one book, they say one thing, and they do another thing in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Sometimes they say one thing and they do the same thing, and that's part of the problem. But it goes back to this, I guess, perception of moral superiority. And I'm not using that to say that, that everything's relative and ambiguous, but using that to say, like, just because you believe this and you follow this doesn't mean that you're superior than somebody different.
Yeah. Well, it
just means you follow this and that person doesn't. That's all it means.
Yeah. Well, and then that's not safe.
Yeah.
That's not. While I hold that perspective, it's not a safe perspective.
Say more.
So basically, what I'm getting at here is, if things aren't black and white, well, gray is very scary.
Yeah, it is.
Because I don't know how much gray to get into.
Because you can get lost in there.
When it's black and white, I know, stay away from the black, stay in the white.
Mm-hmm.
Like, stay away from chaos, stay in the place of order. And it's like, well, when things are a lot more gray, it's like, oh, well, you're kind of thrown into the mix of things. And
yeah, and that's where it gets complicated, because it's like, okay, this isn't a very clear-cut issue. So we have to dive into it and look at the nuances of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's like, oftentimes it's views like I hold, and then views like you hold that differ with mine. We both kind of, people that hold my views and people that hold your views, kind of just, they're invalidating each other the whole time.
Right.
It's like, can't have any conversation when you're invalidating each other.
Right.
Right. And it's like, throw the number 2 commandment in there, or I mean, first commandment, the biggest commandment. They're mixed together to me.
Yeah.
Man, you cannot love your neighbor while invalidating them. So that means you have to accept them where they are at, and let them speak from their experience. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's huge. It was interesting. I don't know totally what my thoughts about it, but I heard someone recently say, I don't know if you've heard the platinum rule.
Yes, that's the Andy Stanley thing right there.
Yes. Yes. So we know the golden rule, treat others as you'd like to be treated, which I still think is amazing.
Yeah.
And then the
helps.
platinum rule is treat others as they want to be treated.
I don't think that's what Andy Stanley says. Fact checker.
Fact check me on that. That's what I heard somebody say recently. They might have misquoted it. I didn't look it up.
I can't remember what Andy Stanley says is the platinum rule. But, yeah, talk about that.
So I think that's interesting in the sense of, I don't know why I brought it up, because I don't totally agree with it in some ways, but I would say, like, let's look at that. So
because I would jump in and say, do they know how they want to be treated?
And that's part of it. I don't think people do a lot of times.
Yeah,
but we're very selfish. We know how we want people.
But I think the problem is we are overeager to assume how they should be treated at the same time. So, like, even though I say, do they know how they want to be treated? Well, that doesn't mean go ahead and assume that you know how they should be treated too. And
I think where that does come into, like you said, I'll use I guess more personal experience in the sense of, I like people who are very blunt with me on things.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It's like, don't beat around the bush. Be blunt about this issue.
Yeah.
There's other people I know
and that's not true for
that
everybody.
will tear them apart.
That will eat them alive.
Yeah. I know a friend is like, if I was blunt with him, his life would be ruined.
Well, like I said,
it's like, he doesn't want to be treated that way. He might not know that, but I know that from experience talking to him, and I can't treat him that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how does this tie back in? In the sense of most time people don't want to be judged for things. Not to say that's always a bad thing.
Well, there's never a time where God gives us the authority to speak a word of condemnation. So we have to first make sure you're saying everything you say. I mean, this is obvious, but like if you're not coming from a place of love when you offer, I guess, correction, then don't offer that correction.
Yeah. Controversial figure, but it was something Jordan Peterson said.
Oh boy.
I know. But I thought it was very profound in the sense of people can use truth in a bad way. And that's where it really comes down to. It's like, yes, what you're saying could be truthful, but you're using it to hurt and offend another person. You're not using it to love them.
So I've come to this conclusion. I hear all the time from pastors, and I heard it in school a couple times. It's like, we got to find that perfect balance of truth and love. And I'm like, balance? What is this? It's not a balance beam.
Right?
They are the same thing.
Yeah.
You cannot have one without the other. Not in the Christian sense. They are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
They're one and the same. I cannot tell you a truthful word and it not be loving. And I can't I can't love you without being truthful to you.
And I guess a way to change the semantics of that is like what you're saying may be correct.
Mm.
It may be real, but it's not truth. It's not loving.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speak truth and love.
Mm. Yeah. Just like Jesus.
Well, that's a huge thing to look at too. And that kind of goes into this where it's like Jesus was judged for the people he spent his time with.
Yeah.
And you know, based on the people he spent his time with, it's like they would be, even now in culture, they'd be considered in some ways bad people.
Well, I think that's a different topic for the day.
It is
for another day.
But in the sense of the judgment side of that.
Yeah. Well,
he wasn't judging them because of who they were. He was trying to love them for who they could be.
Yeah. I mean, I Jesus was definitely perceived by the religious types, the more conservative, you know, the Pharisees were the conservative religious leaders, and you know, they thought things of him hanging out with prostitutes and tax collectors. At one point, they called him a drunk and a glutton, and it's like, what was their evidence for that? If Jesus was,
he's sitting there turning water into wine. They're like, all right,
oh, this guy, we're gonna have issues with this one.
It's a troublemaker here.
That sounds just like our first critique. But
I mean that's an important thing to see, where it's like, okay, who did he choose to spend his time with? Where did he focus his efforts in?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't people who lived the same lifestyle as he did.
I just to throw it out there, I do want to make the distinction. Jesus didn't hang out with the prostitutes and the tax collectors and everybody else he hung out with because they were more sinful.
Right.
He hung out with them, and this might be a trigger word for conservatives, because they were the marginalized people. They were the ones that were not accepted. Yeah. In the religious order.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that too, because I understand the unspoken context of the way I was speaking. So I appreciate you bringing that back into it.
Yeah.
Because I think that's important too, in the sense of the message that was huge in the New Testament was that this is not just for the Jew. This is for the Jew and the Gentile.
Yeah.
This is for everybody.
Yeah. So, you know, we got a couple minutes to close up here.
Yeah.
I want you to say some things about Christians and how it relates to the verse, "Judge not, lest thee be judged." And then I want to kind of speak from my own experience about my understanding of God as judge.
I appreciate you bringing that in. Can you elaborate on that question a little bit more? The first half of that.
Yeah. So, one, we know that Christians are known in the West as being more judgmental types.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, how do Christians? I don't like using the language of Christian.
Yeah, that's
fair. In this context. But how can the average person love somebody else in truth that is doing something harmful without coming off as a judgmental type? And that maybe that's a very difficult question on the spot, but think about it.
I mean, it's a difficult answer. It's a difficult question, difficult answer, in the sense of it's one of those where it's like, how do you approach that? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it really comes down to what's your motivation, what's your heart behind it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That sounds like a really cop-out answer, but I think I've told you this example before. So I was filming a movie with a friend, and I was playing a punk in the movie. And so I had a red and black mohawk.
What do you mean you were playing a punk?
Believe it or not, I'm not that hard. And you can ask anyone in the hardcore scene. So I've got older siblings who are very familiar with that type of lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so it was funny. I was like, oh, I can use what I know from observing them growing up on how to act and be this character, which is beneficial for me in that role. But yeah, so I was a worship leader at one of my old churches, and so for this character, I had a red mohawk, and I had a whole sleeve of tattoos on my right arm. And so we were filming, and it took several months, as filming does. And so I was like, okay, well, I don't want to keep drawing these tattoos on, so I need to make sure that they stay as fresh as they can for consistency. And so I would often wear like short sleeve shirts or cutoffs, anything, sleeveless shirts, just so that it's like I can make sure this is safe. Yeah. So filming looks good the whole way through. And so I was leading worship one Sunday, and that's how I looked. I had a mohawk because that's how my hair was cut. I had a sleeve of tattoos because I needed to keep them that way. Yeah. And what was upsetting to me was, and maybe people didn't recognize me, I don't know. But the different kinds of looks and conversations I had with people. And it was interesting because it was on both sides. People who were looking at me and like, I can't believe you're up there leading worship looking like this. It's like, oh wow, that's pretty rough. And on the other side, people going out of their way to compliment me how I looked. Yeah. And I was like, both of those are judgmental.
Huh. Okay, so explain
at
that.
At least that's how I perceived them. So I perceived both of these things.
So there's a positive.
It was, so the way I perceived it, and this is me. This is the way I guess I perceived this kind of information was that here are people looking at me judgmentally, which is like kind of weird. Yeah. First I was like, okay, this is rough just because I don't fit the mold. I look a little bit different now.
It's like they're judging you for how you look, and it's like, you're on the other side of it, like, this is fake. Yeah. It's like, but what if it was real?
Right. And that's part of it. That's how I felt. Because I'm going back into that. I was like, I know people who look like this. Yeah. Who it's not temporary. It's not Sharpie marker. And it's like, if this is how they're being perceived, this is how they're feeling, it's like, this is rough. Yeah. And I don't like that. And on the other side, people are going out of their way to say, hey, I like your hairstyle. That looks awesome. Or I love the tattoos. I love the story. It's like, you don't know what this means. But on that side of it, it's like, okay, you're going out of your way to say, I'm not a judgmental Christian. I'm not like these other people. And it's like, you're in the same issue and the same fault as these other people for judging me this way. You're just trying to go out of your way to judge these people by judging me. I don't know if that makes any sense. But it was like,
I'm a little confused. I'm not gonna lie.
That's fair. I'm still kind of confused on how I want to say it. But I was
Are you saying that it was wrong of them to compliment you?
I think it was the way it happened. Not that they were wrong for complimenting.
You're saying they were complimenting you because other people were speaking negatively of you?
Yes.
Wow.
And so that was like, I felt that, and I was
You don't think that was a positive thing?
No.
That you don't see it as them coming in behind this judgmental person who says, yeah, tattoos. Right. And they're going, but I really like it. I see that as bolstering, is like, hey, I'm picking you up when you've been kicked down.
So this is anecdotal. This is from me.
Okay.
But I know the way I perceived it, in the sense of, there was a level of it was like, oh wow, cool, someone's noticing this and they're showing some kind of acceptance to it. Yeah. But on the other side, it's like, you're only accepting it because someone rejected it. It's like, you don't accept it because you accept it.
So they're kind of lying.
Yes.
They don't actually like it. They're just doing that to...
That's the way I felt about it. That's a great way to say it.
Oh, I don't have a response to that.
That's fair. And I don't either.
I kind of agree with the heart there. Like...
And that's where I would say that's the important part. What is your heart behind it? What is I love this person for this person, not for how they look. It's like, sure, if they're neglected, I'm going to show them more attention, but not because of how they look, because of who they are. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Well, so it's kind of like, this person, the more judgmental type comes up and says, why are you wearing this? And then somebody else sees that they're doing that, and they're like, whoa, that's a wrong. I need to come in and reassure him. Yeah. And it's like, maybe he says, he reassures you by coming up to you and saying, oh, I really like your tattoos. And I think your mohawk is awesome, which is obviously a lie.
It was pretty sick, I'll be honest. But no, that's true. And maybe that's a problem on my side. Maybe I was judging him because of I didn't like the way it was spoken to me. His motivation could have been correct.
Well, it seems like his motivation was to come in and reaffirm you as a human being. So that I agree with.
Yeah.
So it's like, dude, maybe maybe he doesn't love your tattoos and mohawk, but he loves you as an image bearer and validates your expression of that through mohawk and tattoos.
And that's the important thing that you said too, where it's like, okay, how would I answer that question? Are you validating the imagers of Christ? Recognizing that no matter what someone looks like, they're an imager of Christ.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
You treat them like a person. You treat them like, yeah.
Okay.
I know that's a very vague way for me to leave it. But
treat him as a person. That's not bad advice. Treat him as a person who was created by God.
Just like you tell your teenage son going on a date, treat her like a person.
But anyways, let me respond to that and then conclude with what I want to say.
Yeah.
And I want to clarify. I want to make my thoughts nice and concise, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I might exaggerate with my illustration here, as I tend to do.
It's okay.
But it's kind of going back to what I said earlier. Like, you cannot love your neighbor by invalidating them, which means you have to give them a seat at the table to express their heart and express where God has led them.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the ways I've, thought about, like, how sad it is that so many Christians have such hardened hearts. And they think it's their mission to go out and judge those that aren't living up to their Christian standards.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've been, one of my sayings right now is, how sad is it going to be for I'm not going to say non-affirming Christians, because I think there's still some validity in that. I understand how they came to those conclusions. But Christians whose mission, and here's another exaggeration, those Christians who stand outside of churches that, I've been to non-affirming churches that have had people outside of them picketing them with just obscene things about LGBT people. It's like, dude, you're at the wrong church anyways. But anyways, it's like, man, when you get to heaven and you see other gay people there, how sad is that going to feel that you spent your whole life making sure that they had to defend who they were, and then they are standing next to you? It's like, why waste your life on that stuff? And so, speaking of the judgment of God, and I was thinking about the judgment of God all day today, and the song by Gunger came to mind. That's a little controversial. He has a song called "His Judgment is Love." It's like, well, that fits about perfect, right? If we're gonna judge anybody, it better be the judgment of love, right? And this verse also came to mind, and it's not obvious at first, but I'll explain it. But it's 1 John 4:18, which comes shortly after. John says twice in 1 John 4 that God is love. But in 1 John 4:18, he says, "There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. For fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not reached perfection in love." And I just think the Christian faith is not built on any fear at all. And it seems like right now it's known for its fear of those that do not look like the clean-cut Christian. There's no place for the clean-cut Christian. There's no place for those that aren't clean-cut Christians in Christianity.
Yeah.
It's like that's...
I'll use the word, there's a phobia toward that.
There's a phobia, Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe I'll summarize it this way too by saying that, it's not saying you're right about everything. It's not saying you're wrong about everything. But just because you don't fit the mold, doesn't mean you're right or wrong. Just because you fit the mold doesn't mean you're right or wrong.
Yeah.
There's something special about a human being because you've been created in the image of God. You're an imager of Christ. You can look a lot of ways. You can think a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're right about everything. Doesn't mean you're wrong about everything. But you're an imager of Christ.
And so this...
I didn't expect to get emotional about this.
I'm in a really emotional place right now.
Me too. And
But-
I think it's part of it, and that's because we feel for these people. Because I think in a lot of ways, in some ways, we are these people in some ways.
Yeah. Well, recently I identify with them more than I identify with
Yeah.
what's considered Christian today.
Yeah.
It's
I think we've all felt church hurt, and that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. We've all felt like we've been made to not belong in the church culture.
Mm-hmm.
And this verse, the connotations of fear, the word they use there is judgment. It's like there is no fear of judgment in love. There's no fear of judgment in God. I come back to that Gunger song, his judgment is love. And that obviously has implications of what I believe about, life after earth, but I don't know how we can come to these judgmental conclusions as Christians and it not be rooted in love. And it frustrates me deeply, and this is something I haven't been able to work through yet because I just want to scream to everybody that's been hurt by the church and by this condemning judgment of Christianity in the West. I think of these people that are striving toward the good, true, and beautiful, toward God, and they've been barred at the door. Like your type is not allowed in here. And it's like no. His judgment is love. Come in, and hear about this love.
Yeah. How often do we preach, come as you are, but we practice, come as we are?
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
There's no fear in love. I'm done. Let's close the tab.
Dude, let's close it. I appreciate you. Your thoughts?
I appreciate you too.
Thank you guys for watching. Catch you on the next one.